Hey everybody, Madison here with Health by Ratio, and in this video we're going to talk about the number one secret we teach our clients so that you can exercise while avoiding injuries, and most importantly, how that translates to you moving as well as you can while getting to your fitness and or performance goals. Health by Ratio is an online group of licensed physical therapists, corrective exercise coaches, and orthopedic movement specialists that work together to create holistic programs for our clients that allow them to rehabilitate from chronic and recurring pains and injuries and bridge the gap back to the fit and active lives that they are passionate about living. So if you love fitness, this video is going to be awesome for you because this is applicable for really any type of active individual, whether you like actually strength training, for instance, or whether you're passionate about being able to run or cycle or swim or do some type of cardiovascular sport of some kind, but you need to do cross training to keep your body healthy and strong and stable and all that good stuff. You're going to love this video because this secret is massively important and most people neglect it when it comes to their exercise. We don't even think about this aspect of it. And I speak from personal experience, but professional experience, like this is applicable to our competitive like CrossFit athletes that we work with, to our just like avid boot camp and HIIT class goers, or are the individuals that love doing more classic strength training that we work with. And the number one secret that I want to talk about is anterior versus posterior focuses around our exercise. And for many of us, we have a either even distribution of anterior versus posterior muscle group focuses, or we might even have a skew toward anterior over posterior. Well, for those of you that are kind of confused on what the heck I'm talking about, anterior is the fancy word that means the stuff in front of us, and the posterior is the stuff that is behind us. So we're talking about muscle groups like our quads and our abs and our chest and our shoulders. That's all the anterior stuff. And the posterior stuff is our big back musculature, our core stabilizers and lower back musculature, the big powerful glutes, our hamstrings, our calves, all that kind of stuff. So that's all the posterior side of our body. Well, in an ideal world, our bodies have a ratio of about 2/3 of our muscles sit behind us and 1/3 of our muscles sit in front of us. But many of us treat them evenly. So we might have, like, if we're lifting kind of classically, we might have like a chest and shoulder day versus a back and bicep day kind of thing. Or we might have like just a pure lower body day, and we're working all of the muscle groups evenly, quads just as much as the glutes, just as much as the hamstrings, that kind of thing. Or and this is more applicable for, I would say, a lot of our clients that do guided classes. So whether that's like a HIIT class or a boot camp or even CrossFit or OCR training, like that kind of stuff, a lot of the exercises tend to be anterior focused. So it's not even an even split. It's more heavily on the anterior. So things like more common exercises that we might see would be like push-ups or shoulder presses or some type of shoulder raise of some kind, a high row. With the lower body, it's going to be doing things like wall squats, like holding a squat against a wall, or holding just a squat and being kind of frozen at the bottom, or pulsing squats where we're getting like partial range of motion down there. Doing things like mountain climbers, doing things like burpees where we're coming in and out. That's very anteriorly focused, is doing a burpee. Also leg lifts, butterfly kicks, those kinds of motions, crunches, sit-ups. Those are all anterior focused exercises. Now, these exercises aren't bad for us. They are for some people. Some people, like a lot of our clients, like I said, we're working with people that are dealing with recurring and chronic injuries. So for some of them, these exercises are like, if they have a shoulder problem, some of these exercises are not for them. If they have a hip or a back problem, some of these exercises they need to avoid. Now, down the road as they heal, can they start incorporating these exercises again? Yes, absolutely. But if you're someone that's not necessarily dealing with a serious injury, maybe you're dealing with like random tweaks every once in a while, like you work out and your back gets tightened up or your shoulder feels tweaked for a few days or that kind of stuff, then These exercises can be okay, but we don't want to overload the body with them. In fact, to keep our body balanced, to keep our body moving the way we want to, we need to put way, way, way more emphasis, at least 2 times more. We have 2 times more muscle behind us than in front of us. We need to put way more emphasis on the posterior side of the body. So upper body wise, that means we're going to be doing exercises like rows, any kind of pulling motion actually. So pull-ups or assisted pull-ups or pull-downs, those kinds of motions are all working our back. Things like rows, whether this is with a resistance band or whether it's with a freeway or a barbell, some type of cable, whatever, TRX strap, any kind of pulling motion that we're doing is going to work on that upper back musculature and pull our shoulders back. That's really important for those of us, especially that spend a decent amount of time driving or on our devices, sitting in front of a computer, that kind of thing. We're spending a lot of time in this position already. We don't need to go to the gym and then do a whole bunch of push-ups and a whole bunch of shoulder presses that work on tightening up this stuff even more so. We need to do things that pull us open. And there's a benefit to this on the actual fitness side and even like aesthetic weight loss side and muscle development side. I'll talk about that in just a sec. But posturally speaking, we are going to be doing the work on the bigger muscles at least twice as much. We want to do twice as much pulling motions as pressing motions, and that will keep our body symmetrical and really protect our shoulder girdle and our neck. Then with regards to the core, instead of doing a whole lot of like crunches and sit-ups that teach our body to round this way, that's not how we want to move in a functional setting. And as opposed to doing a lot of things like leg lifts and butterfly kicks and pikes and those kinds of motions, or mountain climbers where we're doing a whole lot of knee driving and hip flexing type motions, well, we already sit a decent amount. This hip flexor gets pretty tight as is. We don't need to tighten it up a ton more with those kinds of exercises. We need to be doing more core stability work. So that's going to be like our various chopping motions, whether that is an anti-rotation, which is holding, like fighting a chop, or whether it's actually moving in and out of a wood chop, or going in and out of an anti-rotation, aka a Palloff press. Doing things like variations of planking motions, and those types of stability-based core work are going to be much more functional and work this entire cylinder as opposed to isolating the rectus abdominis or our hip flexors, which we don't necessarily need a ton more of. Then with regards to lower body, instead of doing like one of the most common things I see with a lot of our kind of more up-tempo style like active clients, so the HIIT, the boot camp, the CrossFit, the OCR trainers, that kind of stuff, that are trying to get a bunch of reps in specifically for time often, is they limit their range of motion on the lower body exercises. So they often are squatting and only coming up to here and then getting right back into their squat, or they're lunging and they're stepping up and still keeping a bend at the hips the entire time. Or they're doing a hip hinge and they're coming up to like here and then back up. So like a deadlift is a hip hinge. They're only coming up to like here the whole time. Well, that is limiting, well, one, it's keeping our hips tight, but it's limiting our glute activation. And the glutes activate in hip extension. So we got to get all the way through full range of motion, whether that's doing our hip hinge, whether that's coming up into a lunge, whether that's coming up out of our squat. We want to be getting into our neutral hip extension position so that we can fully activate these glutes. And then we're emphasizing more that posterior chain from the ground up. We need this whole body working on these muscles that are sitting behind us. That's going to help us protect the lower back. That's going to help us stabilize our knees better. That's going to help us protect our shoulders and our neck and avoid injuries. Now, on the performance side, the beauty of this is not only does it prevent us from hurting ourselves and it undo some of these postures that tend to tighten us up the wrong direction, it also helps us get in better shape and drastically better shape. Because again, the muscles that sit behind us, those are our big power drivers. Whether we're running, whether for distance or speed, whether we are swimming, whether we are going through say playing a sport of any kind, we're jumping, whatever, we need to rely on these big, powerful muscle groups to do the work to really explode us through these motions, or even just sustain us for long-term endurance. Like, we need these big muscle groups. And the challenge is when we start focusing on too much anterior stuff, like we start doing a one-to-one, meaning for every back exercise I'm doing a front exercise, a posterior to anterior, or maybe even more so. I'm doing more anterior exercises than in front. That means that my body's going to compensate and start relying on things like my quads and things like my hip flexors and things like my rectus abdominis and my chest and my shoulders. And again, it's not that these muscle groups shouldn't be exercised. Unless you have an injury and we need to actually kind of do some rehab, maybe some of these aren't. But like, it's not that inherently these exercises are bad. It's that we don't want our bodies to dominate toward them. We are not going to be a very good runner if we're quad dominant and hip flexor dominant. We need to have good propulsion from the glutes and our hamstrings to help us really get the most out of our body. We're not going to be very powerful if we're constantly strengthening just this front portion of the core and we're missing the lateral stabilizers that also propel the shoulders and get us moving in a good position. We're not going to move well if we and be very effective with our sports if we're in this position and our arms are moving across our body and we're getting a side-to-side movement. We need to have shoulders neutral and be able to move straight forward and straight backwards. Or if we're throwing a punch or if we're throwing a ball, we want to have that full range of motion with the shoulder girdle so that it allows us to drive the most power out of our actual movements. So it makes us become a much more effective athlete, so to speak. And whether athlete means for you someone who actually is playing sports, or whether it just means like someone who's like a weekend warrior and having fun and trying to keep their body fit. And then on the fitness side, the aesthetic side, how we look in the mirror kind of thing, the bigger the muscle group, the more calories it burns. So if most of your muscles sit behind you and you work on the big muscles that sit behind you, guess what happens? You burn more calories. What does that mean? That means you lose more body fat. Also, the bigger muscles will tone you up more. The bigger the muscle group you work, not only do you strengthen up and tone up that muscle group, but it also allows your body to produce more natural anabolic hormones. So you produce things like human growth hormone a bit more because you're working on the bigger muscles. So that translates to you being more toned everywhere, or more having more muscle tissue everywhere. So we want to work on this posterior chain of the body for a variety of different reasons. It helps us stay healthy, anatomically speaking, keep our joints in a happy place, avoid injuries, all that good stuff. Allows us to become more powerful and more effective at whatever activities we love to do, whether that's hiking or whether that is sprinting. And it allows us to actually get in the best shape we can be in, getting the most bang for our buck out of our workouts. So the thing that we're always teaching our clients is looking at their favorite kinds of workouts that they like to do, their favorite kinds of activities they love to do, and teach them how to modify it. It's not that they can't do that boot camp or that CrossFit workout, but they need to be able to see, okay, in this workout, we're doing 10 exercises. And of those 10, there's like 6 or 7 of them that are doing burpees, mountain climbers, leg lifts, push-ups, shoulder presses. And then there's 1 or 2 that are doing rows or a glute bridge or a full squat or something like that. And they're looking at that and they can say, yeah, you know what? This is mostly anteriorly focused. So how do I swap that? I'm going to take that mountain climber, and instead of doing a bunch of knee drives, I'm going to hold a plank and I'm going to do heel kicks instead, because now I'm working on my glutes and my hamstrings instead of driving the knees and working on more of the front chain. So I can turn it into a posterior exercise. Or instead of doing push-ups and then a shoulder raise, I'm going to modify and I'm going to do a row instead. And that's what actually makes all the difference in the world. Now, obviously, some of our clients, we just build out workout plans for them, and then they don't have to modify themselves. But this is just having this number one key, this number one secret in their understanding allows them to modify any kind of workout they want to do and still keep it healthy for their body and make it as effective as possible. If you guys have any questions on what I just talked about, feel free to write them in the comments, or feel free to reach out to us directly, and we'd be happy to answer. Like if you're like, hey, what does this exercise, is that more anterior focus or is this more posterior focus? Is there a way to make this exercise more posterior focus? Let us know. We'd be happy to help. Or if you want one-on-one coaching for free from my team and I, we would love to help. We're going to link our calendar below this video where you can pick a day and time that works best for you, and you'll be able to chat with myself and my team about what you've been dealing with, what your goals are, and we can then set up another call with you, a second free call that's over video, where you and I will be connecting and going through a number of movement assessments. We're going to assess how you're moving throughout your daily and active lives and test out your ranges of motion and really determine how and why your body is doing what it's doing from head to toe, so we can get really nitty gritty. Hey, these are the exercises that you should tear up. Do these ones as much as you possibly can. These are great for you. These exercises, avoid like the plague. These aren't good for you for the time being. And these ones are kind of in the gray area. Or what mobility techniques do you need to do to help your body heal and rehabilitate and restore its ranges of motion back to symmetry? So if you are interested in that, feel free to click on the link. Those 2 calls are completely free, and we can't wait to help. Talk soon.